Viktor Orban, the man that is defying and going against NATO and the European Union in, well, being pragmatic and trying to establish peace in all of Europe, i.e., establishing a negotiation or peace deal for Ukraine. Now, Viktor Orban, the man who is, dare I say, leading European countries in a way to move forward, is a man to be respected, not the other European Union leaders or even NATO vassal states. I would not trust them with my life. Now, I do have an article here that is going to illustrate everything that I've just said. It's titled Viktor Orban Meets Vladimir Putin Dismaying the EU by the New York Times. And it starts off with Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary met with President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin on Friday. A rare trip to Russia by a Western leader and one that quickly stirred concentration in the European Union. Good, because Viktor Orban seems to be one of the few rational leaders in Europe, along with Fico and Slovakia, of course, as they both want to end the conflict in Ukraine, as any sane leader would. And I'm sure all of us taxpayers would heavily agree upon that, right? Right? Continuing. Mr. Orban made the trip 3 days after visiting President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine in Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. And it was the same week that Hungary took over the European Union's rotating presidency, prompting other European leaders to quickly declare that Mr. Orban was not representing them in Moscow. Why would he represent those other European countries and their leaders? I think is something we all gotta ask. He wanted to lead by example and suggested that it was the right move to do so, which I agree. And here it implies that the EU and NATO countries don't care about peace or using diplomacy to resolve what is needed to end this conflict, which in my opinion, NATO started ultimately will leave a bad taste on their image and mark in terms of history and globally. So they also write, Mr. Putin and Mr. Orban met for more than 2 hours, but there were no signs that the talks had done anything to influence Mr. Putin. The Hungarian leader appeared to acknowledge as much, telling reporters after the positions of Kiev and Moscow are very far apart, understandably so. You have Russia who won't accept any peace deals without Ukraine telling its armies to stand down and hand over their military and political leaders who have caused this conflict. And that includes actual far-right army and or militia units that are the ones running the government through threats of violence on their own citizens and, politicians, to put it politely here. Then you have Ukraine, who wants to return all the land that Russia is in, which, if we're being real here, will never happen, just due to a lot of areas that Ukraine doesn't have the amount needed to do so. They continue to say, his trip to Moscow in defiance of the European Union's policy of shunning Mr. Putin fits into a long pattern of Hungarian disdain for Europe's fightful efforts to forge a joint policy. Joint? I thought that the European leaders were able to decide for themselves, not be a collective hive mind that they painted the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact members as being. Interesting. Not to mention, they are going against the whole concept of democracy and having equal say and not just going with the flow. And they write, overall, the fight remains a war of attrition. While Russia regains some of the initiative on the battlefield in recent months, it has taken enormous casualties, and neither side appears to have the capacity to achieve a decisive breakthrough. Source? And I'm being serious here. Show me the sources that are balanced and objective, not that are going to be either one-sided on Russia or Ukraine regarding the total cost in terms of manpower, military equipment, and financial stress, as I'm sure all of us want to have a balanced take in seeing what is real and what is not, regarding the stats, of course. Seriously, have you seen the videos of Ukrainian men literally being dragged off their feet and sent to the front lines with little to no training? And you want to tell me that it's going to be a stalemate? This is jokeable. I'm literally laughing. It's ridiculous. This is probably why, in my opinion, Orban went to Russia to reduce the lives being lost, mostly from the Ukrainian side, to be honest, with, again, all of the video evidence showing Ukrainian commissars literally grabbing any man that they can to go fight, which, goes against the whole Zelensky's statement of, oh yeah, we only lost officially 31,000, troops, which doesn't make sense if you're forcibly conscripting your regular men who don't want to go fight and or even escaping for that matter, which there's also a plethora of videos of that as well. And they continue to write, The Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs released a statement Friday to reiterate that Mr. Orban made his trip to Moscow without approval or coordination with Ukraine. Good, as he should, because any political leader wants to establish immediate negotiations, whatever the means. And of course, why should he have to tell Ukrainian Foreign Minister of Affairs, hey, yeah, I'm going to go to Putin and I'm going to discuss something that I think is, necessary to preserve all the lives of your men and their men, which you would think, like, duh, yes, that is what is needed. And they continue to write, Russia was not invited to a recent summit in Switzerland aimed at bolstering support for Ukraine's negotiation position. But Mr. Zelensky has raised the possibility that the Kremlin could be invited to the next international gathering organized by Kiev. You want peace. You need to have both sides on the table, not just having one without the other, as we saw a few months ago at the failed Ukrainian peace summit. My God, the insanity here. Seriously. And do you people think that now, after the Western media and their paid actors, shills, and bootlickers are going to say Ukraine is winning? That's laughable. When in the past 2 years, they've been telling us that Ukraine will win and there is no need to negotiate. And now we see here that Ukraine wants to sort of negotiate after refusing so many deal offers from Russia and other, sane European and, dare I say, other, global leaders that have made those propositions. And Ukraine has refused, which I'm not surprised because a lot of Western countries are encouraging Ukraine to refuse, which again is idiotic. Now, they also say appeasement will not stop Putin. Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, the bloc's executive arm, wrote on X, only unity and determination will pave the path to comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in Ukraine. This so-called unity seems to be going down the toilet, as we've seen Viktor Orban and Fico both asking for peace and negotiations, which goes against what the unelected Ursula von der Leyen has been prescribing, that there should be no peace and there should be no compromise, which again is idiotic. Well, the rest of the vassal states in Europe want endless war to go on. Just to be even more clear why that is, there was an interview a couple days ago that basically indicated from a political economist, basically describing that the Western leaders are using this war for resources, like, yeah, no duh. One in particular called lithium. Now, the importance of lithium here is that lithium is used for batteries and other necessities that go in our computers, i.e. computer chips and other stuff, which is also another reason why America will never let Taiwan go to China's control, which even then is questionable now with America's global hegemony being challenged and disturbed, to put it, lightly. And we have the last section here from the New York Times. Almost all Western leaders have shunned meetings with Mr. Putin since Russia invaded Ukraine, seeking instead to isolate Mr. Putin on the world stage. Again, good for Orban, as it shows that it's not just the global south that wants to do trade and establish even greater relationships with Russia, but now you're seeing Slovakia and Hungary doing the same, which of course is the most pragmatic thing to do in my opinion, and I'm sure many other people would agree with that as well. So for my final thoughts here, Viktor Orban is a man that I think we should all pay attention to, as he and Fico, although due to his recent attempt on his life had to take a backseat, is leading the charge for more freedom and diversity of opinions and how to use actual diplomacy, which, what a concept, you would think other European leaders would be doing the same. But as I stated earlier, for them, it's all about that, money and investments, and also to uphold the European and NATO's prestige, which, let's be fair, is not going to be long-lasting anytime soon, while the other European countries, or as I like to call them, vassal states, are losing their PR game here, which is very evident. And I know a lot of pro-EU, NATO, folks on YouTube and people in real life would disagree heavily here. Of course, keep it civil. And even I would respond. And look, if I lose an argument, cool. But if you guys lose it, just accept it as well and be like, yeah, fair point. Or be like, well, I disagree. Okay, fine. We move on with our day. And I do want to point one last thing that just came up today. Recently, Viktor Orban is in China right now, conducting even more progressive diplomacy to get other superpowers on board to the negotiation table that other Western countries won't do, which again is proving my point why Viktor Orban is a dying relic that needs to be brought back. And no offense with me saying a dying relic, it is a relic that is so far gone from any Western countries anymore that being diplomatic and using diplomacy is so foreign to them that they would shriek and shrivel in a cave and say, "How dare you?" When I say that this is the most logical thing to do, right? You want to save lives. You don't want to just annihilate them for, what, for paper that is dependent on your resources and many other things that you're lacking right now. I mean, food for thought, right? So, other than that, I will be covering tomorrow the French election, final on the Snap part 2, because you can check on my channel the other video that I did last week on that. And most of it I was correct, so I'm not surprised at all on what the outcome would be. So, again, if you guys can please leave a like and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And look forward to the video tomorrow. And have a good day, guys.